It was bound to happen eventually. The Orlando Magic have lost a game. But what this loss tells us about where the Magic still need to get better and whether this is something to worry about today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 27th. It will be October 28th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic lose in a frustrating fashion. The biggest weakness revealed from the Magic's 124-111 loss to the Grizzlies, and other reasons to be concerned as this team continues to build and grow. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. And Locked On Magic can be delivered to your inbox every day too with the new Locked On Magic Daily Newsletter. It's the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic Newsletter. Throughout training camp, one thing kept coming up. One element, one weakness, one concern kept coming up. And if you've listened to my show over the summer, it's one that I hit home to. As much as we want to talk about the Magic's offensive struggles being about their shooting and their poor shooting and their lack of three-point attempts, all of that stuff will ultimately elevate the Magic's offense. I want to note this. The Magic are still top 10 in the league in offensive rating, even with how poorly they played in this game, and even with how poorly they played on defense. I believe they're 9th in offensive rating in the early season and 6th in defensive rating. So even though this was a bad game in a small sample size, just a little dent in the armor here. So I think it's important to remember that. It's a long season. There's a weird back-to-back. Not an excuse. The Magic should play better. We'll talk more about them playing to that standard here in a minute. But this game revealed the biggest concern we all have, and frankly, the biggest battle this team is going to wage as they reestablish their identity. This is a big thing that I will keep being on about. Even though a lot of this team is back, even though it's very much continuity and a lot of the same roster, this is still a team that has to discover itself. And the biggest weakness this Magic team had to resolve and had to figure out was turnovers. Last year, the Magic were 26th in the league in turnover rate at 15%. A 15% turnover rate. And again, I would argue, yes, the Magic have to shoot better. Yes, the Magic have to make more threes. But the biggest issue was they gave up a lot of possessions, especially compared to the other teams in the league. And for a team that plays at a slower pace, which the Magic tend to do, they're trying to speed it up a little bit this year. But with a team that plays with so few possessions, not even getting a shot, not getting a bite at the apple hurts. The good news is through the first two games, the Magic were relatively good with turnovers. But it still popped up. And unfortunately on Saturday against Memphis, for whatever reason, could have been Memphis's defense, could have been fatigue, could have been just the Magic were just not focused. All of those elements are there. I don't want to make excuses. All of those elements are there. All of them are unacceptable. The Magic turned the ball over. 19 turnovers for 30 points. It was the point that Jamal Mosley drove home over and over and over and over again after the game on Saturday. 19 turnovers for 30 points. The Magic, and let me just make sure I pull this up here. I did not. I have my regular box score up, not the good box score. The Magic had a turnover rate And again, this is the percentage of turnovers percentages that end in a turnover at 18.3%. You are not going to win games that way. Plain and simple. And while Memphis had 18 turnovers themselves, a big lifeline for the Magic that kept them hanging around, Magic only converted on 17 points off those. A problem from last year, too, to be sure. The Magic need to reduce their turnovers so that they can score more off the turnovers that their incredible defense creates. And then ultimately, Memphis had 24 fast break points to Orlando's 8. Orlando was 3 for 11 on fast break opportunities. Like, that's bad stuff. And there is no excuse for any of that. The reason why turnovers are such a big deal is because of that fast break point element. If you go back to Wednesday's game against Miami, the Heat found some success getting out in transition. I don't have the fast break numbers in front of me, but I remember watching that first half especially. The Magic would miss some shots, especially threes. There'd be some long rebounds. The Heat are trying to push the pace. And Orlando would get back and they'd be disorganized. I think a lot of teams are going to discover the way to crack this Magic defense, or your best chance to crack this Magic defense, is to run. Beat them in transition. Beat them before they're set. Brooklyn didn't do it particularly well, but when Brooklyn came back in that second quarter, it's because of a rash of turnovers. That's 8-second violation. Just really silly, bad turnovers. And Memphis just perfected it. Memphis was just better at it. And that was the difference in the game. The Magic and Grizzlies, Grizzlies shot really well. 46 for 86, 53.5%. Defense was not intense at all. But the Magic made more free throws. The Magic made more threes. They took more threes. They turned the ball over about the same. The difference in the game, and players pointed out the offensive rebounding. Magic had 12 offensive rebounds to the Grizzlies 6. Maybe the Grizzlies 6 offensive rebounds, which turned into 17 second chance points somehow. Like, maybe that hurt a little bit. Maybe every offensive rebound hurt. They were 6 of 7 on their offensive rebound opportunities. Their team offensive rebounds. That's why there's more of those. But the reason why the Magic lost big is because of turnovers. Whenever you lose big, it's usually because you're giving the other team significantly more possessions and significantly more offensive opportunities and shot opportunities. And throughout training camp, this was the message. After every game, after every preseason game where turnovers are a little bit excused, Jamal Mosley pointed out, we've got to reduce our turnovers. We've got to reduce our turnovers. And while the Magic did a good job in the first 2 games, this weakness bit them on Saturday. This weakness hurt them on Saturday. And this is going to be the battle. We're watching the battle lines of the season. What's going to determine victory from defeat? The first stat you got to look at least through this early quarter of the season, is turnovers. If the Magic are turning the ball over a lot, they are going to struggle. Because their greatest strength is their defense. That was the case in this game, even with how poorly they played. If they could get their defense set, if they could play with intensity, they could go on a 21-0 run on the road on a second night of a back-to-back. The Magic played an incredible third quarter again. The third quarter is going to be the Magic's quarter. We're going to be like the Warriors, except the opposite, where the Warriors would just blitz you with a scoring barrage. The Magic come out of the locker room and you don't score points. Memphis had just 19 points in the third quarter. The problem was, Magic were down by 26 at the half. And while we got to give them their kudos for working their way back into the game and getting down by 8, what happened when they were down by 8? You guessed it. Offensive foul on a screen by Franz Wagner. Basket for Memphis by Jaren Jackson Jr. Offensive turnover by Franz Wagner turning into a 3. 8-point game to a 13-point game. and now you're back climbing uphill again. Turnovers are killers. And the Magic, while better, and maybe this is just a blip on the radar, turnovers remain the biggest focus and the biggest weakness for this Magic team. While turnovers were a big factor in Saturday's loss, let's talk about some other statistical concerns as the Magic figure themselves out in this early part of the season. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel has so many great offers for the NBA too. The Pacers are playing the Sixers on Sunday afternoon. That is a 3:30 tip-off. Pacers favored by 7.5 before they make their way down to Orlando. The odds for the Magic Pacers game on Monday, not yet available, but you can still bet on the Magic to win the championship. You can still bet on the Magic to win the Eastern Conference. They're at plus 1,700 still. The Magic still the heavy favorites to win the Southeast Division at minus 160. That's up from minus 140. FanDuel has you all set, whether you're looking for basketball, football, soccer, whatever, as this busy sports season continues. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's make this point really, really clear. Y'all know me. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to go crazy over anything until I see it as a repeated pattern. A lot of my time Saturday night was spent dealing with kind of panic Magic fans like, oh, KCP isn't shooting well. This is a bad game. Like, all this stuff. It's like, no, guys, it's the NBA. They're going to have bad games. It happens. It matters how you respond. It matters that you don't let these issues fester. You don't let these issues continue and build upon themselves. We know that turnovers are a big weakness for this team, and the Magic should be very, very proud of how they dealt with turnovers and how they protected the ball in their first 2 games. But you also have to remember, those struggles are still in there. And it's going to be something they're fighting all year. Paolo Banchero did not have a great game. 16 points, 4 for 12 shooting, 7 for 13 from the line, 7 rebounds. He had 3 turnovers. Franz Wagner had 6 turnovers. That's 9 of your 19 there from your 2 lead ball handlers. No other player had more than 2, which is still a lot. But the guys that had 2 were Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, your 3-point guards, and then Wendell Carter, your center, who does a lot of playmaking and decision-making. Everybody knows that it starts with Franz and Paolo not making mistakes, not making better decisions. And so, you got to live and die with that a little bit. And look, Paolo's got to be better. He was missing a lot of mid-range shots. He wasn't attacking the basket. When he got to the foul line, he missed free throws. Those were points left on the board. In what was ultimately a 13-point game, Paolo missed 6 free throws. That momentum stings. And again, I think what's really important to remember is the team will get its energy from Paolo and Franz. And Franz was good. We'll talk a little bit more about Franz here in a minute during our box score section. Paolo's searching for it a little bit right now. And I think he's thinking a little bit too much. I think he's trying a little too hard, where everything felt very easy against Miami. It was hard against Brooklyn. It was hard against Memphis. Teams are loading up against him, and I think he's struggling to read that defense. It can still be effective. He'll figure it out. He said it after the game against San Antonio, I believe. Every game is a quiz, and, he's just got to study, and that's okay. He's young. He'll learn. You got to go through some of these growing pains. To me, though, the biggest issue was the defensive intensity. And that starts, it doesn't start with Paolo, but Paolo, I didn't think was great defensively against Brooklyn either. I thought Dorian Finney-Smith stuck behind him, got a few offensive rebounds. Paolo was late on some closeouts. Like, it just, attention wandered. And if there could be a benefit from getting your butts kicked, as Jamal Mosley put it, which the Magic did, don't let that scoreline fool you. The Magic got their butts kicked in this game. They were thoroughly dominated. And while Orlando put up a really good fight in the third quarter, this was a bad game. At the end of the day, the Magic have talked to us a lot about their standard. They have talked to us a lot about they want to uphold themselves to a set standard, to a way that they play. And quite frankly, they did not meet that standard. They didn't, by any definition of the word. They were late guarding cuts. They were just caught on their back heels so much. They never really established themselves until the third quarter. Like, no moral victories here. The Magic found themselves in the third quarter, and that's why I'm not going to panic about this. Like, it's a bad game. They made a ton of mistakes. Memphis was more aggressive. They blitzed them. They got out in transition. The Magic weren't ready for it. The Magic didn't have the legs for it, whatever the case may be. The Magic just need to play better. They need to play Magic basketball. And this is a day after I came on this pod and said the defense will always be there. That's what they showed against Brooklyn. They don't need an elite offense. Their defense will bail them out. Their defense didn't bail them out in this game. Their defense let them down. But having said that, in the third quarter, their defense did. What worked in the third quarter during that 21-0 run was that Orlando defended well. They got some turnovers. They got out in transition. They moved the ball. But here's the other concern I have. There's one more concern that I'm watching here. Last year, the Orlando Magic were one of the best teams at getting downhill to the paint. Like, getting to the foul line, Magic didn't do that great against Miami. Did it better against Brooklyn. Did it fine against Memphis. I'm not upset about that. But Orlando, in trying to expand their three-point diet, which is good, I think that's important, have kind of started to lose the paint. Orlando was outscored 62-34 in the paint. A lot of that because of transition. A lot of that just because of poor perimeter defense. Just not a good defensive game for the Magic. Giving up 62 points in the paint is just plainly unacceptable. Cannot happen. But the Magic scoring fewer than 34 points in the paint. Again, granted, 17 for 32 shooting. They got Jaren Jackson Jr. They got Zach Edey, who's a big presence in the middle. Scoring fewer than 40 points in the paint is equally unacceptable. I am fine with the Magic taking 48 threes. I don't have a problem with that. They took 49 against Miami. They took 48 against Memphis. They took 31, I think, against Brooklyn. I want to see that number in the upper 30s. Like, that's where I think the sweet spot is. 40 is probably a good, like, shorthand. Like, if the Magic are around 43 three-point attempts, they're probably doing something right. Last year, I would say, was 35. This year, I think it's 40. And the Magic did shoot particularly poorly from three. 17 for 48, that's 35.4%. We'll take that. Franz Wagner was 4 for 10. He's making threes confidently. Jalen Suggs was 5 for 13. Not terrible. Made a lot of threes in the third quarter. Like, the Magic were able to make up so much ground so quickly because they went through the entire third quarter shooting essentially only threes. The Magic were 7 for 14 from three in the third quarter. They were 8 for 19 in the quarter. That means they were 1 for 5 on shots inside the paint. They also got to the line for 14 free throws. So 12 for 14 from the foul line. That's how you come back. That's kind of the sauce there. But as much fun and as encouraging as it's been that the Magic are taking and making more threes, and I think they're a better three-point shooting team, and I think we will see the Magic get out of the bottom 10 in offensive rating this year, the Magic cannot abandon the paint. They cannot be a team that is just shooting threes. And again, two reasons why the Magic found themselves in a 29-point hole. The first reason is the turnovers. The first reason is they didn't protect the ball. They let Memphis control the tempo, get out in transition, just beat them before their defense could get set. The second reason is, yes, the Magic settled for threes. They jacked up threes when they weren't there, when they weren't good shots. And that leads to long rebounds. That leads to transition opportunities. I don't want the Magic to stop shooting threes. If they're good threes, if they're open threes, take them. The Magic are shooting more corner threes this year than they ever have, than they did last year. They're doing the work. They're doing what they need to do. But they have to be smart about it. And remember that this is their identity too. Their identity is to put pressure on the rim. And as they shoot more threes, as they make more threes, defenses will stop collapsing the paint and give them those paths to the basket. And so the Magic just have to keep finding them. They have to keep finding these pathways to the basket. That is the big key to this team. Like I said, we're still figuring out who this group is. Like, yeah, we have a good idea of it because so many players are back from last year. But every year you have to reestablish your identity. Every year you have to figure things out. And I do think it's important to remember early in the season, you see losses like this. Look, Detroit nearly beat Boston on Saturday too. It's not like, the first couple weeks of the season are always a little chaotic as teams figure themselves out. The Magic have a big game Monday against Indiana and then a 5-game road trip. We're going to see some struggles here. And the Magic will do their work. They'll stay above 500. I'm confident that they will win games on this road trip. I'm confident that they'll be fine overall. There is nothing in Saturday's game that concerned me other than to say turnovers are going to still be a battle. That's going to be the fight for the season. Other than that, it just felt like it was an effort. Again, I hate putting it on effort. That it felt like it was a focus, effort, and intensity thing. And the team admitted that themselves. They've still got to grow up. And learning how to be mature and ready and prepared for back-to-back games, which has been a massive struggle for the Magic the last 2 years. They were 1 in 14, I think, in back-to-backs in 2023. Last year, they were 5 in 13 or something like that. They don't do well on the second night of back-to-backs. Their defensive rating went from 110 to 116 on the second night of back-to-backs. Last night, again, they've been like lights out. Last night, they gave up a 118.1 defensive rating. Like, that's going to be the worst defensive rating the Magic give out in a very, very long time. They're not going to have very many games where they give up more than 115 points for whatever possessions. That's going to be the reality. But this game is a lesson in that nothing's automatic. Nothing is set. You have to work for everything. And right now, the Magic are still building things up. And it's frustrating. A loss like this is frustrating. It's not that you lose. Losing on the second night of a back-to-back on the road in another team's home opener, that's not the end of the world. What's frustrating is that they weren't competitive. Is that they gave the game away early and dug themselves deeper, that they didn't stay in the fight. And kudos to them for the third quarter run. I want to give them all the credit. It's why I'm not concerned where this team's at. They'll be fine. It's just one game. Anything can happen once. It's about making sure it doesn't happen again. And there's still a lot of work that this Magic team clearly has to do. So let's dive into the box score. We'll talk a little bit about how individuals played in this game. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by friends over at Gametime. Hey, it is the best time of the year. There's so many sights and sounds to see here in Central Florida. Whether you're getting ready to go to Sunday night's Orlando City playoff game against Charlotte FC, preparing for the Orlando Pride's playoff game coming up in a couple weeks in November, getting ready for Magic Pacers on Monday, or preparing for the NBA Cup, which is going to come very quickly here after the Magic get back from this 5-game road trip. Gametime has your ticket to the best that Central Florida has to offer in events, whether it's sports, comedy, theater, or whatever. And now with Gametime Picks, you can filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. When I need to go to an event, I use Gametime, whether it's checking the price of a ticket, whether it's going to the event. Gametime is my ticket to the game, the theater show, the whatever, the event, that's where I turn when I need tickets to the game. And with all-in prices, you can toggle that feature to show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You'll find that's what gets you on a lot of the other sites. Their digital panoramic views from your seat in the app show you what the stage, court, field look like before you buy, and with their lowest price guarantee on Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a lower price elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Okay, let's put this game to bed. Let's put this to rest. Let's go through the final box score, talk a little bit about individual performances that we saw during the Magic's game against the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, this wasn't a strong game for the Magic, like, to say the least. I want to repeat this message. The Magic have talked all offseason and really all preseason about playing to their standard, about knowing what they're about and what success is for this Magic team. And they did not play up to that standard. Like Franz Wagner said, they didn't play up to the standard in the loss to Brooklyn. And so in the early part of the season, you're looking for trends, you're looking for through lines, you're looking for things that are consistent game over game. That is a harrowing message, because while it did not look that way against Brooklyn, there were definitely some pockets that weren't encouraging. Against Memphis, the Magic let go of the rope. And that is plainly unacceptable. Again, like, it's not that the Magic lose. You're going to lose games during the course of an NBA season. Nobody goes 82-0. The best record's 73-9. Like, it's not going to happen. And like, we know who this Magic team is. They are not a 73-9 team. We're going to deal with some losses. But what can't happen, especially in games like this, is you can't be non-competitive. You can't be so far, like, I know I've said this before. Let me say it again. The Magic should feel like they can go into every game this season like they can win. The only team that, like, I would feel the Magic are like heavy underdogs against is Boston, because they're Boston. They're really freaking good. Every other team, not that the Magic should be favored to win those games, but every other team, I feel like the Magic should go into the game very confident they can win. Oklahoma City, the Magic play them next Monday. They should be confident they can win that game. They should believe they can win that game. Even though second night of a back-to-back, that's going to be a tough one. They should believe they can win that game. What can't happen is you're out of the game in the first quarter. That can't happen. And the Magic, again, just turnover over turnover. I should have made this point earlier. 14 of the Magic's 19 turnovers were in the first half when they were down by 26. Like, that's 14 points for 14 turnovers for 21 points in the first half. Franz Wagner had 2 turnovers in the first quarter, 2 of the 7. Paolo Banchero had 2 of the 7 in the second quarter. That gives them both 3. They had 6 of those 14. And again, they finished with 9 of the 19. Turnovers were a huge factor in this game. And it overshadowed everything because the Magic just couldn't get themselves back. I know I've spent so much of this segment still talking about the team. Let's talk about individuals. Franz Wagner had a lot of turnovers, made a lot of mistakes. But when the Magic started to right the ship and straighten themselves out, Franz Wagner was the guy carrying the team. And let's forget about everything else. Franz Wagner shot 4 for 10 from 3. He was 3 for 6 in his first 2 games. That makes him 6 for 12, 10 for 22 from 3 to start the season. He may still be very streaky, but 3 games in, I think we can conclude Franz Wagner is a comfortable 3-point shooter. Now, I don't like him taking 10 threes because that means he was 3 for 6 on the interior, getting to the paint. Got to still get downhill. Still need guys to get downhill. And Franz is now shooting threes. That's going to open up space for him to get downhill. So from that strategic point, Orlando becoming a bigger 3-point threat and Franz Wagner specifically becoming a reliable 3-point shooter, that's going to open things up later in the season. So things are still trending up for this Magic offense, and things are still trending up for Franz Wagner. Jalen Suggs at 21 points, 6 for 17 shooting, 5 for 13 from 3. That means he was 1 for 4 inside the paint, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, 2 turnovers. Jalen, I think, was settling for threes. I think he was hunting three-point shots. He got hit really hard on a few drives to the basket, and I think that probably limited his ability to attack. Look, Jalen Suggs was 4 for 5 from 3 in the third quarter. Big reason why the Magic were able to make the push to get back into the game and cut the deficit down to 8. Suggs is still finding himself this year, so it was good to see him have this kind of a game and this kind of a performance. But still, just my big thing is I think the Magic have to attack a little bit more. I mean, take open threes when they're there, kick out, like all that stuff. The Magic still have to attack downhill, and it's good to see Suggs make some threes. He's been struggling a little bit to start the season, but again, just need guys attacking downhill. Getting 13-3, having 2 guys. That's not who this team is. This team isn't a volume 3-point shooting team. They're taking more threes. That's good. They aren't a team that should have guys taking 10, 13 threes, and that's what happened in this game. Let's talk Paolo Banchero then. 16 points, 4 for 12 shooting, 1 for 4 from 3, 7 for 13 from the line, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers. Paolo is thinking too much out there. Defenses are throwing a lot at him. He has to, navigate multiple bodies. He has to navigate a lot of coverages that no one else on the team is seeing. Like Franz Wagner is not seeing the kind of double teams that Paolo Banchero is seeing. He's not seeing the walls that Paolo Banchero is seeing. Paolo has to figure out a lot. And look, he's a star. He has to figure it out. This was a game where I think, again, he struggled to find the right way to attack this defense. And the Magic are, I think, still determined to get him the ball in certain spots. And when that isn't working, they're not going away from that and using him in different ways to get him the ball better. Look, some of this I think is on Paolo. I personally am a big believer that for post-ups, it's always better to get the ball to a guy on the move. Like bring a screen across the paint for a guy, get him the ball. You're going to get deeper post position that way. Paolo he isn't the guy that's fighting for super deep post position. He gets pushed out a lot. And again, that allows the defense to get set a little bit. So I think that the Magic have to be a little bit more creative with how they're getting Paolo the ball. I think they got to run some more pick and rolls with Paolo. He's kind of hunting a little bit, and teams are hedging well to prevent switching so that he can find the matchups he wants. I think the Magic got to use Paolo and pick and rolls as the screener a little bit more. Just find different ways to get him the ball, get him on the move, get the defense on the move while he's catching so he can attack a closing out defense rather than a set defense. I think this is a mix of Paolo needs to stop settling for jumpers. He needs to continue to find ways to get the basket. He needs to make free throws. Obviously, that's a big deal. And then it's just about getting him different looks and keeping the defense a little bit on guard about the kind of looks that he's getting. To me, that's the big thing on Paolo. Like, that's what I am focused on with Paolo and what I need to see from Paolo to kind of spark his score. Like, we saw it against Miami. Like, he's able to get out in transition, attack mismatches. They were able to work the ball around to him. It's there. We know it's there. Just continue to find it and explore it. I think they just need to be willing to experiment a little bit more. Right now, maybe you're running some simpler sets because you're still working your way into the season, but that's there. The Magic's other 2 starters really struggled. Wendell Carter, 1 for 6 shooting, 10 rebounds, 5 offensive rebounds. That's 3 straight 10 rebound games. That's a big, big concern with Wendell Carter off of last year. He just did not get a lot of rebounds. He's rebounding really, really well, but as a lot of people pointed out to me, this is why they think Wendell Carter is not the answer. He struggled on the interior with Zach Edey. Zach Edey still had 7 points, 3 for 4 shooting. He only got 1 rebound. So it's not like Edey was some dominant force, but Wendell Carter's an undersized center. He is not an above the rim center. He's not going out there blocking a ton of shots. That is still a concern with Wendell Carter and maybe a long-term concern with him. But look, Wendell's got to make some shots. He missed some threes. I think Edey spooked everybody, like a 7'4" guy. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. on top of that really spooked a lot of the players from getting into the paint and getting inside. And look, it's not like we'll get to the bench here in a minute, but it's not like the Grizzlies starters killed them. Jaren Jackson Jr., 13 points, 4 rebounds. Desmond Bane, 13 points, 2 for 6 from 3. Ja Morant had 16 points, 10 assists. The Grizzlies did a better job, and this is a fair criticism of Jamal Mosley's rotations. The Grizzlies did a better job mixing their starters in with their bench groups. And that elevated the Grizzlies bench. So let's talk about that bench. Santi Aldama, 22 points. Jay Huff, former Magic Summer Leaguer, 18 points. Scottie Pippen Jr., 11 points, 12 assists. He had 5 turnovers, though. The Grizzlies were able to get a bigger spark off their bench. And the Magic superpower has usually been their bench outscores your bench. Like, they play a lot better. Their bench units play a lot better. And that just didn't happen. And some of that is, you got Ja Morant running with that bench group. You got Jaren Jackson Jr. anchoring that bench group. But again, a lot of that was just effort in a lot of ways. Again, I hate pointing everything down to effort. But back to the starters for the Magic. Wendell Carter Jr., 0 for 3 from 3. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 0 for 4 from 3. KCP has been great defensively. I want to stress this. I think he's been really, really good. The shot's going to come. It's just not there yet. Off the bench for the Magic, they got 10 points from Anthony Black. He shot 4 for 8. Continues to play really, really well. Anthony Black has been really impressive. His defense has been solid. He's finding his pockets to score. He's being assertive and looking to score too. So I think there's a lot to like about the way that Anthony Black played, and a lot to like about how he's developed this year. But again, you look at the rest of the bench. Gary Harris only played 4.5 minutes, didn't score. Cole Anthony, 4 points on 2 for 3 shooting. Bo Wagner, 9 points. Jed Howard came in, played 11.5 minutes, 11 points, 3 for 5 shooting, but a lot of that came in the fourth quarter, in garbage time. Jed Howard, at the end of the game, all 11 of his points, 3 for 4 shooting from 3 at the end of the game when the game was done. The Magic just didn't get the normal scoring that they get from their bench groups. And, that's a big key for this team. They have to win the bench. They have to be competitive in the bench, and they weren't. And again, some of that I think is because Memphis mixes and matches their starters and their benches a little bit better. Orlando goes 10, 11 men. They'll play lineups without one of Franz or Paolo on the floor, and that's a big thing for us. You probably need one of those two on the floor. Even if you throw Jalen in there, I think you'd be okay. But Paolo and Franz are their main kind of drivers and creators and initiators. That's something the Magic are lacking in. They don't have kind of downhill attackers that can mix up the defense a little bit. Especially when, you're a bench group playing against a star like Ja Morant, even though he's still working his way back into things, that hurts. That kills you. And so it's something to consider, something to look at as the Magic continue to refine their team. Again, this is not an excuse. This is not anything. The Magic have to play better. This effort was just plainly unacceptable. But this is the encouraging thing, I suppose. This is the thing we should be at least a little aware of and a little cognizant of. You're going to have games like this. They happen during the NBA season. It's just one game. It's still early in the season. This team is still figuring itself out. They found something in the third quarter. That part was encouraging. Don't let something like this happen again. When the Magic play Indiana on Monday, they need to go right from the jump. Like, their starters have struggled. Their starters didn't play great against Brooklyn. They were down early against Miami. That start of the first quarter, they've been great in third quarters. The start of the first quarter, start of the game has to be a lot better for the Magic as they continue to grow. And look, it's one game. Don't panic over it. But now we know this can happen. Don't let it happen again. Just plain and simple. That's how it has to be. But I'm out of effort. I'm out of energy. I've burned off my 21-0 run. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Which find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of Let Me Know podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter there at @OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, your Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as if that wasn't enough Magic content, I also have you covered on the new Locked On Magic daily newsletter. It's your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. If you can tell from the top of the show, if you're listening to this on a Sunday, I am using this for my Monday episode. 7 days a week was a lot. I'm going to take Sunday night off, enjoy playing some video games, enjoy some football, but enjoy the soccer game because Orlando City's got a big game tonight. So we will be back Tuesday to recap the Magic's game against the Indiana Pacers. So whenever you're listening to this, be ready for the Magic Pacers game on Monday at 7 p.m. A big one, the last home game for the Magic go on a 5-game road trip. They'll be gone for the next week. And then NBA Cup play will start shortly after that. They'll have the election as well. Don't forget, early voting here in the state of Florida has started. The registration deadline has passed. So if you're registered to vote, and I believe the mail-in ballot request deadline has passed as well. So if you have your mail-in ballots, mail them in, get them in early. I mailed mine in Friday. If you are registered to vote, early voting is now open. Check out your supervisor of elections office for more information on how to vote. Make your plan to vote. The election is coming up 1 week from Tuesday on November 5th. Make your plan to vote. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.